Hi there, it's Thursday. That means we are doing our next live on my Botanically page, Alchemy of Soothing Botanic Ingredients. Welcome. My name is Tanya Jooste. And obviously it is my passion to teach about essential oils, all things natural, and how plants can be medicine. And this week we are chatting about one of the oils that my very loyal shall we call it, followers on Facebook have asked for. So there was a sequence, a poll that people needed to fill in to find out in which order I was going to present the rest of my singles. And today it is obviously Petitgrain or Petitgrain, depending on whether you're going to try and say it with a French accent or not. So hello, I can see Kobus is logged in on Facebook. Welcome. And let's just see who else is going to come on Insta as well. We did have a few technical glitches last week with Insta. I think I'm on an old phone, and the battery was really cold because the night before it was really freezing here. And it's in a room that is really cold at night. And I think the battery just didn't want to cooperate. So even though it showed it was charged, it probably wasn't charged as much as it should have been to be able to do a live. So hopefully Insta supports us a little bit better today. We definitely are live on Facebook as well. I can see Rebecca Fisher's just joined in. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about Petitgrain or Petitgrain. So what is Petitgrain and what tree does it come from? Well, this is actually quite exciting because the Petitgrain or the bitter orange tree actually gives us the opportunity to have three completely different essential oils. And they all have completely different chemical constituents and therefore different physical as well as mental and spiritual benefits. But because they do share some of their constituents, they're also going to have some similar profiles in there as well. So the name Petitgrain or Petitgrain is actually from French. It's a word that translates to little grains. In other words, what we're looking for here is little seeds. And the reason why they call it petit or Petitgrain, small grain, is because the fruit of the bitter orange tree is actually a lot smaller compared to all the other citrus. So that's why it's called that. I can see Catherine's just logged in on Insta. Welcome, welcome. Trisha, good to have you on Facebook as well. So that literally means, or the Petitgrain is because of the size of the fruit. Now, obviously, we don't get the Petitgrain oil from the fruit themselves. The bitter orange rind is where you get bitter orange essential oil from. Obviously, the blossoms, that is where we get neroli from, one of my absolute favorite fragrances of all time. I can see Nuzley's just logged in. Welcome, Nuzley, welcome. And then the Petitgrain is actually coming from the leaves and the twigs. And I found this incredibly interesting when learning how they actually steam distill the Petitgrain, because it's completely different to how we would normally steam distill twigs and leaves. So usually we would use like a stainless steel or a copper still. But for the Petitgrain that is sourced in Paraguay, and I'll get to a second why we source it there, but where they source it in Paraguay, they're actually building the stills from wood. It's like a wooden casket in a sense. So if you're thinking about wine, for example, but it's basically this wooden still instead of it being stainless steel or brass. And then they put in all the plant material and they pack it quite tightly. And then they close it up and they've got to seal this wooden still, because remember, wood is porous. And then in between the slats, there's going to be these little gaps. So they literally use the mud from the area to sort of cake it. There's no other way to put it. So they build the mud in between the little, in between the slats and on top. And this is how they seal that wooden still. Really amazing. So if you, for example, think about how some people build a sort of a salt layer over fish when they bake it. So it's that steaming action, right? So it's like a clay oven, but except it's made from the wood, and then they use the clay or the mud to basically seal in that wooden still. And then in Suid-Afrikaanse taal, donkey. You know, like in the olden days when we used to make a geyser for hot water. So this then becomes, in a sense, a donkey, because then they make the fire below this wooden still, which then creates the steam. And then you'll see when they open up the lid at the end, there's this beautiful layer of Petitgrain essential oil that is then floating on top of what we call the hydrolat normally. So I found that incredibly interesting. And the Petitgrain or the bitter orange tree is actually originally from China. And this is where or southern China, and then they started propagating it in Paraguay, and it actually is very suited specifically for the climate and the soil conditions in of the petitgrain or the bitter orange tree in Paraguay. And I think sourcing for me is an incredibly important thing. We do need to understand that we are using plants, and when there is oversourcing, there's always going to be deforestation, and this is something that I'm not very fond about. But obviously I have chosen a company that I am really proud to partner with, because they are very focused on sourcing and sourcing sustainably. So my favorite company has a co-impact sourcing initiative agreement with these farmers in Paraguay. And that also means that the trees are grown sustainably and that there is no further deforestation that is taking place, specifically in the Atlantic rainforest of Eastern Paraguay. So definitely through that co-impact sourcing initiative, they're making sure that the plants are not over-harvested, or the tree and the twigs and the leaves are not over-harvested specifically to make the petitgrain essential oil. So that's really, really cool. So if we look at the chemistry of the essential oil, it's going to be a weird one for most people to understand this. It's got the same chemical constituents that might be incredibly calming and soothing in lavender and bergamot or bergamot. But it smells completely different. It's like very woody. They tend to call it man's lavender, because for men who need that soothing, calming effect, that sleep improving quality that we get from lavender, they tend to not like that overly flowery smell. Petitgrain is definitely going to be the essential oil for them. So we call it man, or lavender of man, or manly lavender. And if we're going to be talking about the oils that blend well with petitgrain, we're going to go through that in today's live specifically, because depending on what you blend it with, it's really going to give you a different desired effect. And petitgrain is definitely one of those that you are going to want to blend. It's very well suited to be blended with other oils. It's got a very distinct fragrance. I know there's a lot of people that are not very fond of the smell, but I do find that when you start blending it with other essential oils, it really is a beautiful oil, especially when you're going to be smelling it aromatically. And of course, aromatic we use for mostly emotional benefits. So because of the emotional benefits of this oil, it's going to be a really good idea to find a combination that you like. And that's why I would like to talk a little bit more about diffuser blends today. The other thing about the history of the petitgrain is that it's going to have the same calming effects, for example, like clary sage and lavender. And then if you're going to start adding other oils in there to invigorate or to soothe occasional anxious feelings, then you are going to get to a stage where you have a desired effect. And we can use the petitgrain topically very effectively. It's very good for good skincare. But at the same time, this is one of the oils that if you do have a food grade essential oil that has got tested lab results for it, if you don't know what I'm talking about and you would like to come to one of my sessions where you can learn about the quality of essential oils, I'm actually teaching a class this evening at 7:15. So if you do want to attend one of those classes or info sessions to learn about quality and how incredibly important purity and potency are specifically for essential oils, and you haven't attended one of those classes with me before, in the comments just put in there discover, and then I'll be able to send you that link to attend my class this evening. It's taking place at 7:15 South African time, just so the international viewers don't log in at the wrong time. And the internal use, especially if you're going to be using a tested grade essential oil, is incredibly beneficial. There's a lot of experimental research that shows using petitgrain essential oil internally, very important, got to have that food label on the side, right? So it's a food ingredient, a supplement label in other words, because that shows it's been tested. There's actually lab results for it. It's safe for human consumption. Then it's going to be supporting cardiovascular health. So that's part of the circulatory system, for example, and part of the good heart function, digestive system, immune system, very good for that. And it's also traditionally been used for the immune system in very many cultures. And now all the scientific research is coming out showing exactly why. Then also the nervous system. This is a nervine essential oil, so it's really good to calm the nervous system down. And there's a lot to do with that from the chemical constituents that are in there, which we'll get into a second, which is why it is so incredibly supportive for a very relaxing sleep, for example. when you are calming down that very overactive nervous system. It's also really good at providing antioxidant support, and we all need a little bit extra antioxidants, especially when we go into how much toxins we are exposed to on a daily basis. It's just to support our bodies to be really healthily and using it in a preventative health kind of manner. And then it's incredible when used internally to promote good quality sleep. So if you are someone that's not really in favor of the fragrance of it because you, for example, have put it in a diffuser before to try and improve your sleep quality, please know that using it internally is going to be really beneficial, specifically for the sleep function as well. Hello, Ruthie. I can see you've also just logged in. Oh, and Bev has just joined as well. Hello, Bev. Insta's going. They knew. Instagram knew you were coming. So today my phone hasn't died, which is really, really cool. All right, so definitely an essential oil, which I didn't know was actually so very useful to be using internally. That was quite a nice surprise for me today. And if we then go and look specifically at the chemical constituents that are in here, it's very interesting because if you were going to compare it to lavender, just remember I said Petitgrain is man's lavender. The lavender and the bergamot has got some of the chemicals in there, but the lavender and the Petitgrain, they have got the linalool acetate and linalool, and those are both incredibly soothing and sort of nurturing or calming, okay? And then it's also got some other chemical constituents in there that also make it a lot more calming. But I think because the Petitgrain essential oil itself has a less robust chemical constituent profile, so there's less chemical constituents in Petitgrain versus lavender. And what that means is the chemical constituents that are in there are therefore a bigger part of the ratio of the total, which means if you're after those sedating, calming, soothing benefits of some of the chemical constituents like the linalool acetate and the linalool, then you're going to get it in a higher potency, a higher concentration, because they're forming a bigger part of the ratio in the total, which is really, really good to know. So then if we go specifically into the chemical constituents, so it's the linalool acetate, I said, and the linalool, which are very calming and very soothing for the emotions, but also for skin tissues and physically. That's where some of the anti-inflammatory benefits, for example, are coming from. I can see Zahira's just logged in. Welcome. The alpha terpenols or terpeneols, they are definitely part of those that are emotionally very calming and grounding. So this is an incredible oil to soothe and calm and ground, and then depending on what you're going to add with it as we go along, you're going to get an additional benefit. So because of these constituents, they offer antidepressants. So we sometimes talk about antidepressant and anxiolytics, so supporting to decrease anxious feelings. We also have very good antiseptic properties specifically from this essential oil. It is also an antispasmodic. Now, this is really, really cool because you also remember that the wild orange tree, which is actually not bitter orange, but sweet orange, that is also very antispasmodic. And you can see how some of the citruses are sort of intertwining. And it's a really good detoxifier. And as I said, a nervine, so it calms the nervous system down, can have sedative properties and can be very tonifying and uplifting to the body. So if we then go specifically into the top users as a result of those chemical constituent properties, obviously a very good essential oil to use around sort of cuts and grazes and wounds on your skin. And at the same time, if you just think about the fact that we sometimes put lavender on an insect bite to sort of draw out the stinging or the itchiness, because of the chemical constituents that are in here at a higher ratio, just imagine how amazing Petitgrain is going to be for your skin, specifically for that. Now, for my beekeeper friend who uses lavender very regularly when she goes and harvests some honey in her beehives, I'm going to definitely suggest to her to take the Petitgrain because it may even have a stronger benefit compared to lavender. So because of the spasms, for example, or the antispasmodic effect that specifically Petitgrain has, it's going to be really good when you have a sort of a spastic sense, when your throat is irritated and you have that spastic sensation in there. Also can help with the congestion which comes along with that, and definitely convulsions and seizures. If you need any kind of support there, it's going to support because it is going to support muscle relaxing. So that's why it's such a good essential oil for that. And at the same time, just think about things tensing up and then relaxing. On the emotional side, when you're feeling very fearful, for example, or you do have the occasional anxious feeling, Petitgrain is a really good essential oil to have in a diffuser. And if you are not inclined to like the smell of it, add some other oils. I think this is going to be one of those that we're going to really enjoy playing with in a diffuser and making different blends. But if you really can't get used to the smell, always put it at the bottoms of the feet, because then it's going to have the same medicinal or benefit, therapeutic benefit for your body, but you're not going to have to smell it all the time. So here's another one. If you do put it under the feet, it's actually incredible for body odor. So even for people with those stinky shoes, if you're going to be putting it under the feet, I think it's going to really have a beneficial supportive effect there. But I think the deodorizing or the deo kind of aspect specifically from Petitgrain, it's got a very strong fragrance, but it's also been shown to decrease sweating. So we do need to sweat. That's how we get the toxins out of our bodies. But most of us that then switch to a more natural approach, so we're not using all the antiperspirants that are clogging all the pores, you do tend to then start sweating quite excessively. Even people who have a very excessive sweating, for example, when they get really nervous, Petitgrain is going to decrease that. So definitely one of the essential oils to try to add to your natural at-home deo. Or deodorant that you're going to be making, because it's going to be really good for the body odor and because of that sweat benefit that I've just mentioned. Incredibly good for skincare and hair care as well. So for oily hair, for example, and even on the drier side, so cracked skin. So definitely one that you can add to your shampoo and your conditioner if you are on the oily hair side, or even on that side where you're going to get those dry scales coming or flakes coming out of your hair. And definitely when you've got sort of the cracked heel scenario. And I know a lot of us have really beautiful feet right now because we're wearing socks and shoes all day. We're not walking around in flip-flops or blockies, and we're not walking around barefoot hardly enough. So no cracked heels at the moment, but when summer comes, that's going to change again. So do remember, please, for then, Petitgrain is a very good essential oil specifically for that. I can see Alka's just joined. Alka, it's the same Alka, so welcome. So the cracked and the skin, and then also talking further about skin, very beneficial specifically when we start looking at people who get skin blemishes really easily. And I don't know, for those of you that know, I really love this book. There's a lot of useful information in here. It's one of my favorites to go and look at. And there's many recipes in this book specifically for skincare that actually contain the Petitgrain essential oil in that mix. So definitely a really good one to try to add to your facial routine on a daily basis. We also, because of the calming and the soothing benefits, do find that Petitgrain is a good one to add, for example, when you're going to make a DIY home roller when your kids are a little bit more active than the normal kid, or struggles to focus on something. So there's some really nice focus, concentration, and memory oils. And if you would like for me to send you a list of those, just so you can remember what they are, straight to your Messenger or your Insta message box, just put in the comments for me, please, that you would like the memory oils list. And then I'll be able to send that to you. Yes, it's Alka from Belgium. She just reminded me. So Alka's logging in on her personal account today. Usually she's in from her beauty page. She's got the most amazing, beautiful spa. And very nice jewelry. I wish I was closer. She's got the most amazing crystals and things, and just little bracelets. Oh, she's got a really, really beautiful shop. Go follow her on Insta. It's really worthwhile to go and check out those amazing photographs. All right, so I can see some of the comments coming through. So the memory oils list is definitely going to be sent to your phones. If I can just run, sorry about that. The whole camera just went. If I can just quickly go through that list, I'll read it to you, but then obviously you want me to send that to you in comments, I will do that as well. So the essential oils for focus, concentration, and memory that can support that, I'm going to read from the book now, so I'm just going to turn my face quickly, is cedarwood, lemon, eucalyptus, patchouli, frankincense, petitgrain, rosemary, basil, and chamomile. So those are really good essential oils, and I can send that to your phone, obviously, if you do put in the comments the memory oils list. Then if we now start moving on to some of the other benefits, and the other benefits here, I'm talking specifically about emotional. We just covered most of the physical benefits. Let's talk about the emotional side, because that's where the diffusers become really important. Because do remember that our limbic brain is accessed when we're inhaling essential oils. So this is where it's going to be really beneficial, specifically when you're trying to address some kind of mood or feeling that you're having. And I think the beautiful thing about Petitgrain is it blends really well, and it's going to smell completely different depending on what oils you're going to add with it. So if you, for example, want to add focus to the already focusing oil of Petitgrain that it is, then you can add other mint oils, for example. If you would like to feel fresh and calm, then you can add citrus fruits or lemongrass. So anything that has that citrusy kind of fragrance to it. We just got bergamot mint the other day as one of our new essential oils, and that's actually from the mint family. It's got a slight bergamot tinge to it, but it's from the mint family itself. So then you're going to get the mint and the citrus combo. So that's probably going to be a really nice one to try, specifically with the Petitgrain. If you want to add some spices to the Petitgrain, then it's going to have that very alluring effect. So definitely one that you can diffuse in the bedroom, for example. The spice oils obviously being things like clove and cinnamon. Those are really, really good ones. And then if we think about the emotional side specifically, Petitgrain is one of those essential oils that keep on coming up in research as being shown to have a really good effect when you're trying to connect specifically with family. And that is why Petitgrain is very often used when you're looking at family ancestry and when you're trying to go back emotionally and sift through some things that need to come to the forefront so that you can deal with them and let them go. And I think there's a lot of us that carry quite a lot of things in our body over the years and through generations because they are just things that we've never dealt with. And they can obviously manifest into physical discomforts as well if it's not something that you're going to address. So Petitgrain is going to be a very good one, especially for that. It almost helps you to build a protective bubble so that you feel like you are in a very safe space. So it helps you to negotiate through those emotions and then work through them and then heal yourself in the process. It's called the oil of abundant foundations, and it is an incredibly grounding oil. So if you would like to, for example, if you do energy work and you are in a healing session with someone that's doing energy work with you, working on the base chakra, Petitgrain is definitely one of the essential oils to try. And then you can add some of the other really grounding and focusing oils like frankincense, for example. And that's going to be really supportive for the base chakra, for example. So the Petitgrain, although it traditionally was only used very often specifically in the perfume industry, which it still is, by the way, I actually added a drop or two to my body lotion this morning. And I've got to say, Petitgrain is a weird smell for me. I've taken quite a while to actually get used to it. But basically, I put it in my lotion this morning, and on my body, it smelled completely different to compare to when you would just smell it out of the bottle. Let me tell you, I can understand now why they actually are using it in the perfume industry. It's got a really beautiful woody yet floral, but not lavender floral tone to it. So it really is an incredible oil. Hello, Sharon. I can see you've just logged in on Facebook as well. Welcome. If you do want to go to catch the replay, to catch the beginning part, obviously on YouTube, on Facebook, on Insta as well. So really on the emotional side, an incredible essential oil to definitely help you process certain things and move on. And because of that whole safer area, it's going to let you feel less perturbed. So perturbed is actually a word that I learned very many years ago with my what should we call it? English is my second language. And when I started working for my first company, it was an industrial company. There was this lady that phoned me, and at that stage I was the quality control and quality assurance manager, right? So not a very popular position because people tend to only want to speak to you when there's something wrong. And then you're at the wrong end of that conversation and you always get scolded. And this woman phoned me with her very good English. And at that stage, I was very Afrikaans. And she said to me, I am very perturbed. And I had no idea what she was saying. I had to go and Google it afterwards. But since then, that word is stuck in my head. So if you are feeling perturbed, Petitgrain is definitely going to be an essential oil that you can try. And now you know how to combine it with either the mints or the spices or the citruses, for example, to get a desired effect. And talking about that, I actually have 2 different diffuser blends that I can also send to you on Messenger if you want. The one is called Citrus Blossom. And I actually posted another one yesterday. So today I can send you a citrus blossom diffuser blend and also one that's going to evade the winter blues. And that's obviously also from one of my other favorite books. But let me just read them to you quickly, and then I can send that to you if you're not going to be writing it down right now. So the first one that you need to comment in the comment section if you would like to have this recipe is called Citrus Blossom Diffuser Blend. So write in the comments citrus blossom. So there you're going to be combining Petitgrain, wild orange, bergamot, lime, and lavender. That actually smells really delicious. I'm probably going to try that very soon. And if you are in that winter blues kind of mood, then definitely in the comments type in winter blues, and then I can send you this diffuser blend, which we all are going to have to try. And it's made up using Petitgrain, juniper berry, as well as wild orange. So that was a fun lesson today. I learned a lot from Petitgrain preparing this class because it's not an oil that I've been using very routinely. And I think after learning how very supportive it can be when used internally, I'm definitely going to start incorporating it a lot more. And now that I know which oils to blend it with to put in my diffuser, it's definitely going to be one of the ones that I'm going to try. So thank you so much for joining in today. We're close to nearing the end of my singles series. There's a couple of them left. So I'll give you a heads up when we switch over to another program. There might be a couple of weeks in between where I plan the next program. But yes, hopefully see you all next week, Thursday, again for my next live here on my botanical page, Alchemy of Soothing Botanic Ingredients. And it's Tanya, and I'll see you all soon. Cheerio.